What's happening, guys? Welcome to Double Shot of Steelers, the post-storm edition. For those of you who live in the area and still have power and still have all of your windows and everything else, that was something that went across Indiana, Ohio, and then it made it to us, and then it was headed toward the central part of Pennsylvania, and who knows what. We don't get many of those in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a really, really, really weather-safe city, but we sure got one last night. Hope everybody, well, listen, I hope if you have enough battery power on your phone that you have just enough to make it through this show. How about that? I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Double Shot of Steelers, and today's episode is going to be about something that ideally will not happen in the coming NFL season, meaning not happen at all, and that would be the concept of drama. It was something I was thinking about during the draft. I was thinking about, when you see, hear, and read about the draft pick's character on draft day, you're very, very rarely going to hear something where you go, whoa. Now, the Ravens have drafted at least one whoa guy in Mike Green, edge rusher. He's got some issues. But for the most part, you don't hear a whole lot of that. I mean, Antonio Brown, when he was drafted, there's some kind of questions or whatever, but you never thought he would, end up going completely bonkers, right? This group seems borderline angelic. Okay. I mean, when you look at some of these picks and you hear them talk, you see their stories, and most unfortunately, in Derek Harmon's case, get to see his humanity through a family tragedy. It gives you hope for the future generations of the Steelers, right? But just from the 2025 perspective, who are we really looking at that would cause drama or stir something up? I know instantly you're thinking of the same guy. No, not Aaron Rodgers. George Pickens. George has kind of shown himself to be what he is. George is, this is not a dig or a shot or whatever. Some people just are this way. George is high maintenance. I say that as somebody who's never had a problem with George. Actually kind of liked him from the beginning. But he is a load. They all know that. They all deal with that. They all work toward managing that, beginning with the head coach. Is there an additional factor that comes with George now no longer being the main guy? DK Metaf is the main guy in his room. He's larger than life in more ways than one. If George were to pout and stomp and do silly things, you know what the Steelers can do now? They can just throw the football to the other guy. If he were to have hold in, hold out, whatever it is, I'm totally making this up. There's no indications of this. But something related to the fact that he'll be entering his final year of the contract, they'd be like, all right, we'll throw to the other guy. So much of his leverage, and I'm really hoping this isn't why the Steelers would have invested $150 million in a second-round pick into Metcalf, but so much of Metcalf's presence mitigates the problems that you'd have with George, no matter what they happen to be. So the only other possible drama is Rodgers himself. And it's been one of the reasons that I'm like, this whole thing doesn't make sense. You'd rather have a room of 53 guys taking the field who are of a common purpose, of a common motivation, a common accountability. And this just doesn't feel like it. Maybe I'm missing somebody else that's a potential in this area. I don't think so. I understand TJ Watt obviously has a contract issue. TJ is anything but the drama type. We'll see how that plays itself out. But I'd very much like to see this be a drama-free thing. And I know a lot of people don't think reporters think like that, and maybe other reporters don't. I'm here to cover football. I really don't need the clicks or the views or anything. It's not my thing. When we come back, I'm going to bring this up with our beat writer at DK Pittsburgh Sports. That's Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Yeah, our man, the Skunk Works out in Iowa, says I can't pay attention to Aaron Rodgers until ink hits paper. I'm kind of with him on that. I don't sit there and go, wow, what would this offense be like if? Or I haven't really allowed myself to go all the way in on the Rodgers thing. Chris, what drama are you expecting to see? I don't even want to say this fall, because really that stuff begins to manifest itself in the summertime. Is there something that I'm missing there? Is there something where you'd go, whoa, that could end up being a real headline grabber?
Well, the thing I'm going to be watching for more than anything is how George does handle his contract situation. I'm not worried about TJ, even if TJ is a hold-in. If it's not done by training camp and he does show up and does the whole hold-in thing, we've kind of been down that road before. If anything, probably the happiest person that TJ isn't at risk of getting injured is Mike Tomlin. So I think he'd be just fine with TJ Watt once again holding in.
Standing right next to him, the way the hold-ins tend to do, by the way, which is hilarious. Remember Minka over there, just like, Yep, he's like coach's assistant.
Yeah,
ball boy.
That stuff does not bother Mike Tomlin whatsoever.
No.
And for anyone who tries to remember, like, well, what are you talking about? TJ needs to get ready for the season. Well, that season he opened up and made Josh Allen his, I can't say the word on the show.
No, female dog.
Yeah, he wrecked Josh Allen in that game. So, I wouldn't worry about TJ Watt when it comes to that, but I'm definitely more concerned about. I'm concerned if there's going to be a similar like Brandon Ayuk type situation where 49ers reporters were watching him every single day. Is he showing up? Is he going to be on the sideline? I have a feeling if a contract situation is not taken care of, that if it's a hold-in, what's George going to be doing? Is he in street clothes? Because even when Deontay did his hold-in, he was at least participating in individual drills. He would just go on the sideline for when the team started doing team stuff. I don't even know if George is going to do that. That's what I'm probably most concerned about heading into training camp.
Yeah, I think, in TJ's case, what ended up happening from the media standpoint that was different from the 49ers situation with Ayuk, and I understand why the Niners were covered the way they were, whether it was the San Francisco Chronicle, San Jose Mercury News, or anybody else that happened to be out there, was they're looking at a guy who they think wants out, which is really different. Mm-hmm. When you and I look at TJ, we're just going, I mean, it's TJ. Where's he going?
Oh, yeah.
He's a Steeler for life.
It's not an issue with TJ.
Yeah. So eventually they're going to get this figured out and whatever. So it's a different approach, different attitude, and of course, different headlines. Where George is concerned, I believe that in George's case, I'm going to keep saying this. I just think he got defanged here. Okay, with this DK Metaf acquisition,
he did.
When somebody else comes in, any workplace, anywhere, somebody else comes in who can do your job, and they're right there next to you, and you say, "Hey, I'm going to refuse to do this," and they're going to go, "Yeah, okay, you just go right ahead and refuse." I mean, it's not the nature, especially the wide receiver position. Chris, we don't have access. No reporters do to the current off-season workouts that are happening at the Rooney Complex. However, the great Carl Roser, the team photographer, he's so talented.
He's very good.
Does. And Carl and Alyssa Rubin, who's also on that staff over there, were out with those sessions for a couple of days, and they took exactly 155 photos. Ask me how I know. I went through all 155 of them. And you did too. And we're looking there to see, in part, news. Who's there, who isn't, whatever. And you can't take an exact.
Oh, yeah. No, those are just pictures. Yeah.
The photographer can choose to shoot who they want to shoot and everything else. But when you're looking at 155 of these and you see all these different guys and some of them in there several times, man, I'll tell you one thing. Broderick Jones, he is the star of those photo sessions. He looks like he is working his bleeping rear end off, which is great because he might be the biggest question mark on the entire roster, right?
Yep.
And shouldn't be with all that talent, with all that the natural gifts that he has. But there's one photo in particular of all the wide receivers. And there's DK Metaf, and there's Calvin Austin, and there's everybody. Roman Wilson's there, for crying out loud. Roman Wilson, by the way, is all over these things too and doing all kinds of really athletic things. So he doesn't exist. and you're looking at these things and you're going, yeah, George, not there. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, if George sees this photo, what's George going to think? That new guy just came in there and he's running with my guys and he's catching passes from my potential future quarterbacks. That it's just a different dynamic. You know what I mean, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think George is really kind of thinking about that right now. I think George probably has some, to kind of use like the old school cartoon situation. He's got those dollar signs in his eyes. He knows that he's, going to be getting a second contract soon, whether it's from the Steelers or if it's from another team, or even if it's a franchise tag. That's going to be a gigantic raise for him. Either way, he's going to get paid after next year. So
somewhere.
And somebody's going to say yes to the talent that he brings. They'll deal with the headache. I think that's why number one, he's not, as far as I know, he's not there. And that's not only based off of the photos, but that's also based off of his own Instagram account where he is posting photo or videos constantly of him working with Route God, which, again, the same guy. Yeah, again, the same guy who worked with Deontay Johnson to help him with his route running. So, I mean, it's good. I mean, at least he's working. He's not sitting on the couch eating potato chips.
You mentioned Route God.
Yeah,
we're all way too close to football when we can say Route God and have it be a normal thing.
Yeah, no.
But the only thing that would be funnier than somebody who calling himself Route God is if that was his name.
Oh, yeah.
like the family, the mom and dad and mom, they hand the baby to mom and she says, and we shall dub him Route God.
Route God. He's going to grow up to be a really good receivers coach.
Someday he will be an elite wide receivers coach. Route God. Everybody say hi to Route God.
By the way, just to give a quick little inside thing to some people, like, why isn't he working with Zach Azzani, the Steelers receivers coach? Well, a lot of players work with their own coaches in the offseason, and they specialize
in all sports.
Even more so, right? They specialize even more so at the particular position. A lot of quarterbacks work with particular quarterbacks coaches in the offseason because sometimes a second perspective helps, or a third perspective, or whatever it is. And so it's good to work with more and more people, and teams aren't going to be like, yeah, don't work with them. Like, if it makes you better, no, absolutely. They're like, if it makes you better, do whatever you want to do. Absolutely.
And it's specialized to it.
Yeah.
It's in most cases, whether it comes to these pitching factories that are now common in baseball, skating coaches in the NHL, where it's really, really, really specific. Chris, when I'm thinking of when Mitch Keller went to the pitching factory of the Pirates in North Carolina, the next thing you know, Mitch shows up in Bradenton throwing 100, and you're like, what the heck is that? And Mitch is like, yeah, man, look at me. I can throw 100. It turns out by the time the baseball season came along, he didn't need to be throwing 100, and he's never done it since. He's never done it in a major league game. Okay. But he had his specialist get him up to whatever, right? The same thing goes for the skating coaches.
Mhm.
A lot of them have commonality with the speed skating coaches in the Netherlands, who are obviously like the eternal, gods of speed skating. The Dutch are.
Yeah.
And there's ways to lengthen your stride, make you become literally faster. Lots of guys do it. It doesn't have anything to do with what you do, technically speaking, in a team context. What the route god does is he has them working on how they'll pivot, how quickly they'll turn. The routes that are being run by the Steelers, whether they're designed by Arthur Smith, Zach Azzani's in on that, they don't matter. It's how you handle them. It's how you navigate them. So I get a lot of questions about that in general across sports. Like, why don't the Pirates or the Penguins or the Steelers just hire somebody like that? There's really not a need. What you're teaching them at this level is not physical skill. It's not extrapolating your physical skill. It's finding a way to put that into the team concept. Chris says there should be somebody specializing in soft tissue injuries. The Steelers had a lot of those. If there have been any changes, Chris, to their strength and conditioning or anything, I'm not aware of it.
Nothing major. If there have been any changes, that there have not been anything major as far as I know. I do know that Rod Moore, who's on that staff, is not only still there, but he has been very active in the draft process. He was at the Senior Bowl. He's been to multiple pro days. I believe he was at the Combine. I don't know that for sure. But I think he was at the Combine based on everybody who I spoke with. But I know for a fact because I talked with him at both the Senior Bowl and at pro days. So, it's nothing major as far as I know there.
If you're not a member yet, go to dkps.net/join. Don't do that now because we're still on. But yeah, you see that it's under Chris's face there. He's smiling. Now it's a smiling face. dkps.net/join. That's the other thing we can do is when somebody joins and becomes a member, Chris smiles over it. Bing. Aren't they the same ones, Jim Pekarsky says, who had Russell Wilson hit a sled? That whole thing got so badly blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
It really, really did. If you're getting hurt on something like that, I'm sorry. You're either too old to be doing this or you didn't arrive into camp specifically prepared to do NFL level work. You know, I understand that it's silly to have a quarterback hit a sled, but he wasn't going into it the way the tight ends are.
No, right. Yeah. But people need, I've been kind of, doing live Qs on the site. I get all kinds of questions and everything. I just, sometimes people need to validate a feeling about something. And if they can tangibly put their finger on something and say, this is the reason why, then it makes them feel more warm and fuzzy inside instead of not knowing what the problem was.
It's not a coincidence that I mentioned how good the Dutch are at speed skating. And then I get Peter saying, hello from Belgium. Very informative podcast. Thank you. The Belgium, of course, being just to the south. And the Belgians are actually pretty good at it, too. They're just not the Dutch.
Belgians also produce some really good soccer players, too.
They really do.
Eden Hazard is like one of my all-time favorite players.
He's not alone. He's not alone.
No, I know he's not, but he is the reason I'm a Chelsea fan, by the way, is because of Eden Hazard.
David Smith wants to know what happened to Ramon. Ramon's under the weather. Ramon wasn't able to do his day job or the Ramon show today. So apologies for that. Life happens.
It does.
Yeah, Chris says that was most assuredly a Russell Wilson thing. He's been in the league long enough to know his own limitations. Right. I mean, he could also have just said, what do you mean? I hit a sled. You know?
I think they are going to rethink the way that they do their testing whenever players come in for training camp this time.
I like this from Jake Cox, who unfortunately is not a member. It'd be kind of cool if he was. He says, DK, the statement that the Steelers are in a win now year is so funny to me. We didn't say that today, by the way. You're referring to something that's a blanket thing. He says we're always in a win now year. Yeah, they are, Jake. But is that always a good thing? Does that lead you to the most productive drafts that you can have? Does that lead you to more free agent signings of younger players based on age? More in the spirit of, let's say, the Patrick Queen type of deal, where you get somebody that is going to be as productive as you possibly can be over the life of that contract. I think at some point there had to be a pull back from that. Now, you're not going to hear them say that. Okay, we're going to go into Latrobe. Mike Tomlin's going to show up in that media room there in the Mr. Rogers Center, and he's going to say that the goal here is to win the Super Bowl. He's going to say it, and then Omar's going to say it, and Art's going to say it, and because what would be the benefit of having this be the first year that they don't say it? But I feel like there has been at least a little bit of a pullback, a little bit.
I would say maybe not necessarily a pullback, but definitely more of a reconfiguration of the way that they want to attack long-term building. Playing the comp pick game is a part of that. That's definitely something that Kevin Colbert didn't necessarily do or didn't. I mean, even then, again, not to mention live cues again, but I doing live cues on the site. Somebody was asking about guys up for potential contract extensions. He rattled off like 8 players. I'm like, to me, my mind went to that could be a lot of players who leave via free agency and get the Steelers more comp picks in the 27 draft. Because that might be just what. A part of the way Omar wants to continue to acquire assets. But if I can kind of maybe play devil's advocate on the whole, should they not go for it? Should they go for it or pull back? Again, I think the Steelers haven't really been a true contender since Ben blew his arm out, which just goes to show that you need a quarterback. And as long as you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to contend, or you stand a really, really terrible chance of contending. And so until they get a quarterback, it almost doesn't matter what they do. You might as well just go ahead and go for it.
Daniel Hanst says that I was the first credible person that he's heard explaining that tanking isn't necessary to get a good first round draft pick and change his whole outlook. I remember there was a lot of reactions to that when I brought that up. It's something, again, it's one of those, look at it from 32,000 feet. And you'll see that teams do this if they are committed. Chris just mentioned all of these assets that Omar's building up. Well, what do you do with those assets? Do you actually go ahead and draft 14 people each year? No, because you don't have anywhere to put them.
Right.
Okay, it sounds great. Wow, we got 14 guys in this year's class. Well, guess what? When they get to Latrobe, not even 10 of them are going to make the team. So what are you doing? Why are you building up those assets? What you want to do is utilize them to move up. Now, what should be a little bit sobering in this regard is seeing what Jacksonville just paid Cleveland to move up one spot to get Travis Hunter. Now, if Hunter turns out to be everything that he apparently thinks he is, boy, does he think a lot of himself.
He does.
And not without cause.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, not without cause. If he is that, then Jacksonville and all the bold talk afterward from the Jaguars about how, picks, what do we need picks for? We need this player. Okay, then it'll have been worth it and no one will complain. But it's a heavy, heavy cost. There are analytical measures I've seen between the Cleveland and Jacksonville trade, just that one, that show that the Browns won it by a factor of 2.5.
Yeah. Meaning
in terms of actual value. What the Browns are going to end up getting out of that trade just dwarfs the sun versus what the Jaguars will get, even if Hunter is a star. So I don't know if a price is set, because anytime you have either the Browns or Jaguars in a transaction, you kind of skewing the process a little bit. Okay. But if the Steelers want to move up in 2026, they'd have to give up a lot, but they have a lot to give up. They don't need to tank. They don't need to lose. Okay. It would be a massive price, but at some point or other, damn it, Chris, you got to pay it. Okay. You're going to get, and all we're talking about here is quarterback. Okay. Mm-hmm. At some point, you're going to have to say, listen, we as a franchise, we're just going to have to pay it. If there are, let's say, and we don't know this now, how many quarterbacks in the top 10 in 2026? You don't even have to be exact. You don't have to name them, whatever. Is it half?
No, I don't know if it'd be five. Okay. 5 of 10 is a lot. There's a bunch that are in the first round. Yeah, I would again, the whole college season we play between now and then, but it would not surprise me based off of early projections, even taking Arch Manning out of it, which he most likely won't be in next year's draft class.
I'm not buying that yet.
Right.
Colleges, everyone says, well, his dad. And come on, man, this is a different time.
Yeah.
He'll come out when he's ready.
Yeah, he'll come out when he wants to. Either way, even if you take him out of it, there still probably is a good chance there will be 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks in the first round next year. Top 10 is a different story.
Okay, but so top 10, well, let's say 2 or 3, just for the heck of it, okay? But just because it's the quarterback position, okay? If you feel like you need to be in the top 10 to get not necessarily your main guy or your star guy or your number 1 overall, because it's in some cases, as we saw with the Titans this year, Titans weren't even answering the phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Titans just said, we're getting Cam Ward, and that's the end of that. You notice that there was not a shred of anything related to the Titans. They just made up their minds. The end. Don't call us.
Yeah.
So you can't always get what you want when you're heading up into that territory, but you can get close.
Yeah.
If you really push it, you can get your guy, and you can get your guy in a strong quarterback class by parting with these assets. Nobody needs to tank. The Steelers can go 16-1 and do this.
See, and that's what, like George says, the Steelers got Ben at 11 and they were bad. Listen, like, yes, they were bad, and they didn't have to give up anything to pick at 11th, but the Steelers have what they need to move up to 11 if that's what it takes to get the quarterback that they want.
Yeah.
With the Chiefs, I'll keep bringing this up. The Chiefs were picking 27th the year that they took Patrick Mahomes. They traded a future first and a 3rd round pick in that draft class to move up 17 spots to get to 10th overall. You don't have to get to number 1 or number 2 or number 3 overall in order to get your quarterback, especially when the quarterback class is going to be a good one, and all signs look like it will be a good one. So you can move up to 8th, to 10th. You can identify there are 4 quarterbacks that we'll be absolutely happy with to try to build our franchise around, and then do what you need to do to make sure you get one of those 4. I'm not going to name those 4 right now because, again, there's a whole college season to be played.
Oh, yeah.
And so I can say Garrett Nussmeier, and I can have half the people watching this right now push back and be like, there's no way he's worth it. Doesn't matter. There's a whole college season to be played right now. So either way, you have the assets to go get what you want and not feel like, well, our entire draft was this one quarterback, so I hope it worked. No, you can part with those assets and still have a draft after that.
James Fairfield, with the indisputable truth here, says, if tanking was necessary, the Browns would be Super Bowl champions. He's right.
Yeah.
He's right.
It's true.
If tanking was some vital thing, some critical step along the way, there's just no way, that the Browns wouldn't have won something along the way, even as badly as their run. I saw something here about, and I lost it. I'm looking for it, is related to Will Howard. What if Will Howard were to, don't build him up too much for 2025. He's going to be your 3.
Yeah.
In any circumstance, Aaron Rodgers or not, he's going to be your 3. If Rodgers isn't here, then you bring in Ryan Tannehill or someone like that, and then somebody else is a 1 or somebody else is a 2, but he's going to be a 3. Yeah. He's not really even going to have a chance to show what it is that he's got. Okay.
Barring injuries, yeah.
Right. However, barring a lot of injuries.
A lot.
And what you have at the quarterback position, though, that's interesting is, let's say that Will Howard shows something. He shows progress in practices. And let's say that the Steelers, unlike with 5 or 6 years of Mason Rudolph, actually recognize this progress as it's happening away from competitive fields. Okay? This is my obligatory shot on that front. And let's say, just for the heck of it, ride with me on this, that Mason Rudolph has himself a really successful season for the Steelers. Let's say that for whatever reason, Rodgers doesn't come in or whatever, and Mason just goes out and gets the job done. Steelers believe in him. He's our guy. Okay. Does that change what you want to do the following season? Does that change? No.
Nope.
No. Nope. Mason will be turning 30, and Mason will have only had 1 year. You could still enter the following season with Mason as your quarterback. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And Will Howard is his backup. And then whoever it is that you get, do you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of different ways that you can handle this situation by just stacking up the quarterbacks. The PEF points out that the Chiefs got Patrick Mahomes after making the divisional round the previous season.
And had Alex Smith on their roster. When he was
very effective, very highly effective Alex Smith, arguably the best Alex Smith that there was.
Yep.
In his career. Luis, who's going to become a member after this show, says, hey, Chris, how about Mike Hilton as a slot corner? We've been talking a lot about Beanie Bishop, Brandon Eccles as a possibility there. What do you think? Could you bring back Mike Hilton, or was Mike Hilton maybe a little bit inflated in our heads because of his ability to blitz and pass rush and do all kinds of fun things as opposed to covering people?
I mean, I do remember the coverage issues with Mike Hilton. I do also think that he's probably been their best slot corner since it's become a thing in their defense. Like, legitimately, since they've really had to have a slot corner all the time. That's just the way the league has gone. I think he's been the best of all the different players that have played there.
Makes plays.
Now he's going to be 31. It's got to be a really cheap deal, and it's got to be a situation in which you're not completely married, where pretty much you don't want a Cam Sutton situation from last year. You don't want to bring a guy in and then have him completely squash anybody else possibly playing just because he's the veteran guy and we're going to give him all this. I mean, you're going to have a number of different guys competing for this spot, and it's just the way that they've addressed it over the years. Even Mike Hilton was an undrafted free agent. It was not like they drafted him in the 3rd round and being like, okay, he's going to be our slot corner guy. Like, that's just not the way the Steelers have gone about addressing this position, which I think right now your options for it are Beanie Bishop, who was an undrafted free agent, Dante Kent, who was a 7th round pick, Brandon Eccles, who was a cheap free agent, and Sebastian Castro, who was an undrafted free agent out of Iowa this year. Like, you're going to have a lot of guys who are, what's the way Mike Tomlin likes to put it? A lot of dogs fighting for one bone, pretty much.
Two dogs, one bone.
But it's going to be like 5 dogs, one bone. And those are 5 very, very hungry dogs because they're all 7th round picks or undrafted free agents or cheap free agents. Hungry dogs for one bone.
Going to take a couple more today. James says, hey, DK, how many of George Pickens' issues are a result of his age or this particular age of athletes? I'm not of the mind or spirit to be excusing infantile behavior. And a lot of what we've seen from George falls into that category. You see players of his age come in who are both poised and professional and carry themselves in a way that's expected in an NFL locker room. And I know every once in a while here, I mean, to touch the sore spot in the subject, because a lot of times when this happens and someone like George gets criticized, race gets brought up. Well, you wouldn't criticize him if he was white and he was acting like that. And no. Okay. That's just not it. Okay. I'm never afraid to touch subjects like that. I see someone who needs to do a lot of growing up And I don't know or care. James comes back with saying parenting. I don't know. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and judge his upbringing or his family or anything else here. I know what I see in front of me. Okay. Now, I also know that when it comes to race and so forth, you can go right through the locker room and find 9 out of 10 or 19 out of 20 examples where you just say that's how you're supposed to carry yourself in an NFL locker room. The first people that would tell you that's not okay are the African American athletes who are in there. Okay, yeah. So I'm not sharing anything that's out of line here. He has to grow up. It's ironic, Chris. It's not even so much so that he fits in and aligns with the team. I think he has to do it just for himself.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because you want to give, because there were definitely, this comment here says, George is definitely fitting his pre-draft profile. There were some teams that completely took him off their board because of the character concerns.
Yeah, they knew you could catch a football.
Oh yeah, that was never the issue. But yeah, listen, I don't like to make it about a generational thing because there were definitely prima donna receivers. I mean, for those who might not remember, Terrell Owens was oh my gosh. I remember him doing an interview outside of his house while he was doing sit-ups. Like the media came, like you could not be more like, it's just, well,
lots and lots of Caucasian examples in this regard. Lots and lots.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, there have been prima donna receivers. There have been prima donna players going all the way back through older generations, through the 2000s, through the 90s, and you can keep going back and back. You'll find more and more of them. It's always been a thing in professional sports. It just always has been.
Jay Mood says George will be all right. I think Deontay is worse. No
way.
No, Deontay was like the responsible big brother out of those two. I don't know where that stuff comes from. I think it's maybe because of one or two things that happened. One on the field in Cincinnati. Remember when he didn't? I don't remember exactly what.
And
that
then
was.
The other one is when he punched Mitch Trubisky at halftime. Or whatever. No. He got into
Deontay's a grown up. Deontay's a grown up, and it'd be nice if he finds a home. And I don't mean that as any kind of shot to the Browns or whatever, but it'd be nice if he finds a home somewhere and stays put, or maybe he was just always meant to be either with the Steelers or nowhere. We've seen cases like that too.
Yeah, happens.
And Denny says the Browns might want to trade for George Pickens. They seem to be putting the old band back together, meaning Kenny and Deontay up there. Okay, Quentin Chandler's taking all this too far. He says, I'm black and I'd rather have Will Howard. We're not even getting into any of that stuff here. Philip Fulmore says the media has to take some accountability. You mean for these characterizations, Phil? Yes, absolutely. There's no question about that. But that can be true at the same time that I can say here to you, looking you right in the cyber eye, that George needs to grow up. Okay? Like Manziel needed to grow up, just like other guys. This is about immaturity. And the one thing that nobody mentioned here, but that is now going to become a real thing, is that if you thought college players had their egos inflated before, okay, and when you're coming out of the bigger programs like the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States, and they treat you like you've already made it, you're just a legend. Okay, you're the biggest star in every place that you walk into. Now factor in NIL. Did you see Cam Hayward comment on the on social media about all the NIL parties? We're not just talking about Deion's kid. Okay, we're talking about they spent $1 million on that party, on the party, more than he'll get in his signing, in his bonus, in his contract, his entry level deal from the Browns, presuming they sign him. You become entitled. Skunkworks says when you already have money when you enter the league, look out. It's a different world right now. Mark Cunningham gets us back on track here and says, I think Mason can be quarterback number one and possibly this year's Sam Darnold. and have a nice season. Darnold's name gets thrown around in this context a lot, Chris. Do you like the season that Darnold had in Minnesota? Did you find it to be authentic? It looks like Chris has frozen up there.
Well, just talk a little.
Well, I'll tell you what my view of what I saw of Darnold up there, first of all, is that not a lot of people did see it as authentic. Otherwise, there would have been a really long line for him in free agency, and there wasn't necessarily. He did end up going, where was it, Seattle? Does that sound right? Darnold went to Seattle. You guys can help me out on that one. But he did have his time, and Geno Smith had his time. And these things do happen. And look, if it wasn't for the end of 2023, none of us would have any reason to believe in it. None of us would have any reason. So this doesn't come out of nowhere. Eric confirms, yes, it was Seattle. Except that we saw it. We saw it with our own eyes. Okay, we experienced it. And it wasn't just 4 random games. Those were 4 winner-takes-all games. 2 of them were on the road. One was in Baltimore. One was all the way across the country, speaking of Seattle. And he won them all. And within those, he played, well, no, he didn't win the playoff game, I'm sorry, in Orchard Park, obviously. But he won the 3 games to get them in. And he played okay in Buffalo. I thought Deontay was more responsible for that interception than anything else. But we saw it. We laid our own eyes on it. It actually happened. So you don't have to guess in it. And if you say, well, that's just a small sample size, it's just 3 games. Okay, look at it from the standpoint of other sports. 4 games is a quarter of the NFL season. In baseball, that'd be, a month and a half. There's a lot of good that came from that, but then the plug got pulled. So we don't know where it would have gone. We don't know. I'm not exactly 100% sure why to this day. We don't know. Butthole asked why I got into journalism. That's way too long for. I wanted to. Simple as that. I wanted to be a reporter. It had nothing to do with sports. I just wanted to be a reporter. By the way, the people who get into this business because they want to talk about sports or whatever never make it. Your heart and soul has to be in the art of whatever type of media work it is. It has to be in reporting, writing, or speaking, or whatever you have as it relates to journalism. And then from there, you go wherever it is that you go. But my thing was always about the journalism. A Butthole also asked about the bobbleheads. I don't know if you were asking me to identify them. I sure hope not. That's Myron Cope. That's Roberto Clemente. And that right there is the greatest athlete this city will ever see. I'm going to take one more with you here today. I would imagine Chris probably lost his power. Like everybody's been losing their power over the last 24 hours. Yeah, he's toast. Dan Finnegan brings the Trent Dilfer comparable. These always make me cringe. This is DK. If the Ratbirds can win a Super Bowl with Dilfer at quarterback, the Steelers, you don't need to Dilfer him. He's not a game manager. Mason can play it. Okay, Mason's a dynamic quarterback who can get a lot of different things done. And I would advise anybody who feels otherwise or who has permanently set their impression of who he is back in the 2019 season, after he was getting his head clubbed in by helmets, revisit those games. Revisit some of the throws that were made, in particular to George Pickens, since we've been talking about George a lot. So anyway, we're gonna come right back with our business aspect of this right after this. I have to buy her time to find the thing. Butthole just winning the day here. I swear it's just so that he can get me to say butthole 7 times in a given show. How do you join your website? He's referring to DK Pittsburgh Sports. We try not to overlap the 2 subjects here, but come on over to DK Pittsburgh Sports, go through the menu, and you'll see. You will not be disappointed by either our app or our website. My experience, though, has been that the YouTube people, meaning you people, tend to stay where you are. And our people, the DK Pittsburgh Sports people, tend to stay where they are. So especially since they are two different, completely different, nothing in common subscription platforms, we try not to overlap so that we don't confuse anybody. If you want to become a member of this site, go to DKPS, this channel, I should say. Yes, see the boss over there, channel. DKPS.net/join is the place to do that. We are now up to, wow, another all-time high. I see this stuff when you guys do. 2,158 memberships. I got to tell you, that's not all that far from 3,000, which is our goal in advance of reporting day in Latrobe at St. Vincent College. I'm starting to believe in this. There have been times when I've doubted a little bit, especially when we've gone backward with these things, which also does happen. Yeah, she's asking, okay, just a little bit of the hiccup here. Wandering Warrior says people are hating on Mason from their parents' basement. Jake Cox says that he became a member or subscriber. See all the terminology here. This is why we don't overlap these things. Thank you, Jake. We love having you over there. You will love being a part of that place. You would also love being a part of this place if you're just a YouTube person. There are, as everyone got to see over this past weekend, lots of very real benefits to being that. And it's just 99 cents for the entire month. That's it. You know, there's no per episode, none of that stuff. There's no come on in here if you pay some cover charge or whatever. It's just 99 cents and it's no sweat. It takes like 2 seconds to get it. You don't even know that it's happening here. And Sean Evans points out about our actual app, the DK Pittsburgh Sports app. He says, you'll use the app with ads one time and you will promptly fork over the money. Haha. Yeah, you can thank the boss for that.
Explain what that means, though. It's free app.
Yeah, if you become a subscriber to the DK Pittsburgh Sports app, there's no ads.
But you can come.
But if you want to read the stuff and fight through the ads, you can do that as well. I mean, she's raising her eyebrows at me. I mean, it's pretty rough. Okay, because if you're not paying anything, we're
just like the rest of the internet.
Just like the rest of the internet here. You know, Justin Watson says I should change my name to something funny, considering how much me and DK interact. Yeah, don't be calling yourself Butthole. There's not a good outcome to that. Let's take care of some business here while we're at it. James Galloway dropped a couple of bucks here. Doug Sawyer became a new member. Rick Petrangelo with 10 gifts. Much appreciated, Rick. Rick's been with us for quite some time now. More from Butthole. Lee came in with $2. Mo says, why should I join the show? Mo wants me to sell him on that. You guys can do that. You're right there in the comments. You can go right at Mo and tell him why. Jack Long is a new member. Welcome, Jack. Josh Cook is a new member. I thought you were already in, Josh, but welcome. Kerry Russell's always dropping one here. And Rick, it turns out, I was right, has been here with us for 22 months. Kyle Mundy drops a couple of Canadian dollars, and those didn't used to be worth anything. They are now. Canadian money's on the way back, pal. JM, I don't know how I missed this somehow. But he came in with a curious contribution of $5.22. Maybe that's a personal thing. Says, thanks for the great show, DK and Chris. My question is it my imagination or is Mason Rudolph in the best shape of his life? Mason's always been in great shape. If you're seeing some of those pictures that I've described that are coming out of the building right now and some of the workouts that the team is having, what you see are players running around in T-shirts and shorts. So you can actually see their physiques more than you can at other points in the year. Mason's always been the consummate professional in that regard. Cody with $5 also brings up one quarterback played big schools and won a championship. The other played smaller schools, and when played big schools, Oregon lost 49-6. I have no idea what any of that means, Cody. I'm sorry. No idea. That went like zip right over my head. The only thing I ever do with college football is when the draft comes is I will study the individuals, and I will study them hard. But I have neither the time nor the inclination to watch minor league football on a general basis. I have just too many other things to do with hockey and baseball in Pittsburgh. Jeff came in with 5 gifts. Matters of the Heart is a new member. Brent Haynes hit his 2-year point as a member, as did Daniel Pike, as did Levi Smith. Levi celebrated the occasion by gifting 20 memberships to others in here. Thomas is a new member. And I'm going to check at the very bottom here to see if there's anything new that came in. Yes, I see Russell slid in right under the garage door and says, what player are you the most excited to watch? Oh, dude, it's not close. You know, one thing I hope people haven't lost sight of, just because the draft has happened and there's all this quarterback back and forth, is that this team acquired DK Metaf. This is a player who is eye candy to watch from a football perspective. The things that he is physically capable of doing on the field, the energy with which he performs, the fire, the fight that he has. I don't do this often. I don't watch other teams' players and think, boy, it sure would be nice if they were a Steeler. I do that with 2 guys in the National Football League. I did it with Metcalf, and I do it with Travis Kelce. You know, where I just say, wow, that person should have been at some point in their lives a Steeler. Metcalf is that guy. I can't wait to see him. And I'm not even talking about games. I want to see him run drills in Latrobe. Guys, thank you so much for being with us, for supporting us. People ask, what's the reason to get the membership? The number one reason is to support what it is that you're watching. That's what the boss is always telling me to bring up here. And she points out that Chris lost his internet, weather related. He'll be back tomorrow. So we will also be back tomorrow. Russell, I didn't understand that at all here. Everything's going over my head now. Let's do it again. Let's do it again tomorrow. Bye, guys.